Hello, friends. The topic of today's discussion is the OAuth 2 exchange flow. A bit about myself. My name is Anand Naram. I have around 29 years of architecture and delivery experience. The sole purpose of this video is to give back to the community I learned so much from. Let's jump into the topic, topics right away. We have a list of OAuth 2 authorization flows which Salesforce uses to approve a client's application access to the org's protected resources. You have the web server flow, user agent flow, the JWT bearer flow, client credential flow, these being the most common of the flows. You have some other flows, the asset token flow, the token exchange flow, the device flow, not so common, but used in specific cases. There are some newer headless flows used with the Experience Cloud also in the picture now, but these again are not so common yet and are used only for the external users. What I'm going to focus of today is the token exchange flow, one of the many OAuth 2 flows Salesforce uses for authentication and authorization. Uh, as per the Salesforce documentation, when Salesforce is just one component of an architecture that includes a central identity provider, IDP, either Okta or Ping or Antra, etc., along with multiple apps and microservices, use the OAuth 2 exchange flow, token exchange flow to simplify your integration patterns. With this flow, exchange tokens from external identity provider for Salesforce tokens and grant access to Salesforce data. What does this mean? As I said earlier, the token exchange flow is not a common flow. One of the use cases I have used this flow is where a custom web app, apart uh, 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 where I've used this flow is where a custom web app, part of the enterprise single sign-on application, has to be authenticated by an identity provider, but needs to access the resources from Salesforce. How does this work? Uh, you have a custom web app which gets authenticated by the IDP. So over here in step one, the web app is getting authenticated by the IDP. The IDP uh, verifies the user who's logging in onto the web app and, if satisfied, gives back an IDP token. What the web app then does is uses the IDP token, does a post request to Salesforce and passes the IDP token to Salesforce. What Salesforce does is it is going to uh, validate, verify the IDP token. Once Salesforce is satisfied, it will give back the Salesforce access token to the web app, through which the web app can now access the Salesforce resources. Let's delve a little more detail into this OAuth 2 dance. The end user, using his browser, logs into the web app. The web app will check for the SSO IDP token. It the, the first time does not find, call it will call on the IDP to verify the user. Right? Now the IDP verifies the user. If satisfied, it will pass on the IDP access token to the web app. What the web app then does is it will take the access token it has received from the IDP and post it to the token endpoint for Salesforce. What Salesforce is going to do internally, it's going to take the token, uh, the access token, which the IDP access token, and it is going to pass on to the Apex token exchange handler class. The implementation, which can be customized, and I will show that during the implementation uh, uh, section, right? Uh, what the token exchange handler class then does is will call on to the identity uh, provider to validate whether the access token which it has received from the web app is valid, and if the user is a valid user of the identity provider. The identity provider validates the user details and is going to pass on the user information back to the token handler class, the token exchange handler class. The next step of the token exchange handler would be to verify whether this user is a valid user in Salesforce. It will do that by querying the user object. Once it is satisfied that the user is valid, Salesforce is going to return back an access token to the client app. The client app will then use the access token to access resources in Salesforce. Let's move on to the implementation of the token exchange flow demo. What we will need is an Okta trial edition. You generally get it for 30 days trial. Uh, the first thing we will do over there is we will create a new user, would be a standard user, uh, right, which will also be having a username login created on the Salesforce side. Then we'll move ahead to create a new application in Okta, which would be just like a connected app in Salesforce. We have it for Okta, which is going to give you the access token. We'll move on from Okta. We'll move on to the Postman configuration. We are going to use Postman, which is going to be mimicking our web application. We'll be creating a new workspace. We'll import the Okta environment and the Okta collection. We'll configure the OAuth, the OAuth 2 flow to connect to Okta, and then we will get the Okta token and we'll call the get current user REST API of Okta to see if the token is working. Once we have the access token from Okta, our job is to exchange it with Salesforce access token. So for that, we are going to be using a developer org, a newly created developer org. We'll create a new user, as I said earlier, this is the same username as Okta. This wouldn't be required if you already have Okta and Salesforce SSO already set up. And the just-in-time provisioning is already done. In most cases, at that time, we would not use the username to do the matching. We would probably use the federation ID to do the matching and verification of the user. Moving on, we will create the connected app. I'm using the token exchange flow. We will write an Apex class, which is a token exchange, which is going to be a token exchange handler. And not to forget, we will be using the remote site registration, wherein we will actually register the Okta URL. So let's move on. What I have in front right now is the Okta admin console. As I said earlier, the first thing we need to do is create a user. So I'm going to create a new user. I'm going to go into the directory, into the people, and I'm going to add a person. I'm going to name this person as Tom John. It expects the username to be email. Remember, this username for our demo should match the username, which we will create on the Salesforce side. So right now I'm naming this tom.john.tef at gmail.com. For now, I'm going to give my temporary email as the primary email. Say activate now. I will set the password. I don't want the user to change the password. And I'm going to save. So the first part is done. User has been created. Now, what I need to do is I need to create an application. Again, as I repeat, this is very similar to the connected app application, which we create in Salesforce for integrations. We're going to create a connected app. We're going to create an app. We're going to use the web application. Again, the web application is going to be mimicked by uh, our Postman. So we'll go to Postman later once we finish configuring the application in Okta. I'm going to call that as TEF, or token exchange flow. Uh, I'm going to get refresh token. For now, I'm going to leave the default values for the sign in redirect URI. We'll have to come back and uh, update this field after we configure the Postman. Leave everything same over here. I'm going to have allow everyone to access. I'm going to disable uh, the federation broker mode. So I have now created an application. If you see, I've got the client ID and secret, right? I am going to assign this application to the new user, which I have created. Tom John has been assigned. One more thing to keep notice, I need to give a scope over here. The scope has to be, I mean, we are going to give a call. What we are going to mimic is Tom John is going to give a call to Okta to get the access token. So he's basically going to be validated. Once he gets the access token, he needs to read his information, right? So we're going to give the scope for okta.users.read. Yep. And that's what needs to be done on the Okta end. The second step is we are going in, we'll be going into Postman. This is my Postman environment. What I will do is I will create a new workspace for the token exchange flow environment. Basically, this workspace is going to hold the Okta environment and the Okta collection, right? So I'm going to call this as token exchange flow with Okta environment. Um, Now, the next step is to actually import the environment and the Okta environment and the Okta collection. I will be posting the links. I'll be posting these links in the description below. So the first thing is to import the environment. This is the URL for importing the environment. I'm going to say import, and I'm going to put that URL over here, which this gives a call, and it imports all the environment variables, which can be configured or which would be needed for Okta. The first thing, once you have configured this environment, keep in mind you need to get the Okta URL to be configured here. So give me a second. Yeah. So what I'll do is I'm going to take in the Okta URL. The one thing you need to keep in mind is the Okta URL, which you're going to put over here, should not be the admin console URL. It should be the standard Okta URL. So you may want to remove the Okta part of this. Just test it if it's correct. It is. Yes, it's correct. So we're good there. So that's the first environment variable. You'd also need to put, it's good to keep the client ID and the client secret as environment variables. You could use it in multiple calls. So client ID, client secret, and we'll also put in some environment variables for auth URL. And token URL. These are URLs to hit on, in Okta. So going back, let's select the, we had, yeah, uh, let's update the client ID. And the client secret. In the auth URL and the token URL. So basically, what we'll do is we're going to do this base URL for both, and then we will copy token. Okay. So these are the four variables which you would need to call Okta application. You save it. Next step, probably just give a name to this. Save it. Let's go to collection and import the Okta API collection. Rather, what you can do over here is you could go directly to the link over here and say run in Postman, Postman for web, and it logs into your Postman environment, and you can add the collection to your environment. Right. So now you have the APIs, you have the environment set, you have updated this. Let's configure the OAuth parameter. Make the collection look at the environments you have set. It becomes blue, which means it's correct. Going to the body part of it, going to, or rather, going to the authorization part of it, we are going to use OAuth 2 to configure. Right? And we are going to use the explicit authorization code, explicit code OAuth flow. In Salesforce, this is also called as the web server flow, right? The auth URL is what we had set. The token URL is also we have set in the environment variables. The client ID also we have set. The client secret. Scope, if you remember, we said we are going to use the scope parameter. So that scope parameter is what we had given, okta.users.read. State, just give 1, 2, 3, 4 for now. Client credit chosen body. That's fine. And you- first thing, what we should do before we hit the access token, it would always be better that we log out from the Okta purely because has been signed in as the admin, right? We need to sign in as Tom John, right? So either we can sign in from here or it is going to ask us when we hit the regular web server flow. Oh, sorry. If you remember, we had to set the URI parameters because Okta needs to respond back to Postman. So there is a URI parameter, the callback URL, basically, which we need to put in Okta. Getting a push notification from Okta whenever you log in. You go to the application, so that customization application, and you're going to select the token exchange demo one. That is the one which we have selected just now for Tom John. Now we have selected token exchange flow. Let's confirm this has Tom John in there. Tom John is there. And we had said in general, we are going to update the URI, sign in redirect URI. This is the Postman URI, which we just copied. Save. Okay. Now let's go back and hit it. Yeah, correct. So again, we did not log out from the admin login. So I'm pretty sure this token which we are using is taken for my for the admin login, right? And I can confirm that with giving a call over here. It is going to say this is the admin and not Tom John, right? So what we would need to do for Tom John is we should be logging out of Okta and log in as Tom John. So now I've logged in as Tom John. I would get a new access token for Tom John. I'm going to use token to test it. I'm going to call the API, the get current user API. In this case, the logged in user is Tom John. You notice the login is Tom John, right? So this has been taken care of. We have already configured Okta. We have got the token from Okta. Store the token which you have received in a safe place because you will need it later when you are going to be hitting Salesforce. Let's move on to configuring Salesforce. The first thing about configuring Salesforce is the first thing about configuring Salesforce is the user. Again, I'm repeating, if your Okta and Salesforce SSO has already been done, in most cases, the user has already been synced with Salesforce, so you don't have to do that explicit sync. You don't have to do this job of creating the user for now. I've not done that configuration. The username, I'm keeping it same as what is there in Okta for the verification. Again, in most cases, if the SSO has been configured, in most cases it would be you would actually verify using uh, the federation ID rather than the username. So I've created the user. Next step, I'm going to create a connected app. Uh, I'm going to enable OAuth 2 settings. Callback, for now, I can just leave it as and for now, I'm going to give full access. Okay, important thing over here is I'm going to deselect all this and I'm going to select enable token exchange flow. It will by default require secret for token exchange flow, which is fine. And I'm going to save. I'm going to come in to manage application. I'm going to say edit policies. I'm going to enable token exchange flow over here, and I'm going to say only approved users. It's always good that you pre-authorize. So only the users who have been pre-authorized can access this app. I'm going to say uh, uh, the system administrators can, all users belonging to the system administrator profile can access this application. So this part is taken care of. One more thing I need to do is I need to yeah, I need to get the client ID and the client secret to hit Salesforce. second. Yeah, I will copy the client ID and secret. Okay, client ID and secret copied. Now, next step is to create the token exchange handler. So I'm going to go to the identity section, then select token exchange handler, and I'm going to create a token exchange handler class. The name of the token exchange handler class. I'm going to say the token is exchange. The access token, which I'm going to there. We don't need it to create more users. We just need to verify whether the user is a regular user. We at this moment we don't have a class created. So my take would be I would rather create a class and then configure this. Then allow me to save the audit because so let's go and create a token exchange handler class, an Apex class. Now, I'm going to copy the class because of time constraints. Right. Let's go over this class. This class extends the an interface, basically the auth.oauth to token exchange handler class. Because it implements this class, there are two mandatory methods. One is the validate incoming token, and the other is the get user for token subjects. Uh, these two uh, these two methods are get called by the connected app framework. So you're not giving a call directly, right? You're just accessing the connected app, and the connected app is going to give calls with all the parameters which it has received uh, from you. Uh, so uh, going into detail of the validate incoming token, uh, the first thing what we are doing is we are checking whether the token which we have received, is an access token. So you have a token type which gets passed over here. Uh, if it is an access token, great. Let's move on. We're going to use the incoming token which we would have passed from Postman. We're going to use that to call get user details. This is a custom method which we have created, wherein what we are trying to do is we are going to take the token from Okta, give a call to Okta. We're going to give the call to the REST service get current user, right? Uh, Along with the token information, the Okta token information. If it comes back successful, which means this user is a valid user in Okta, that's been verified, right? So he's a valid user in Okta. We need to now check if this user is a valid user in Salesforce. So the connected app is going to take that information, pass that into user data, and pass that user data information to uh, the get user for token subject. Over here, we are going to extract that username and see if in our user object we have that particular username. If it is there, we are good. And we are saying, okay, this user is a valid user in Salesforce also, and he can access the resources within Salesforce. Now, in most cases, we would not be using the username. We would be actually checking against the federation ID. In this case, for simplicity's sake, I'm checking just based on the username. I'm going to save it. This is done. Let's go and configure the token exchange. Let's go and configure the token exchange handler class. So now I'm going to say create token. I'm going to use the name. Let's say access token. Token exchange. So this is the access token. I'm going to say, okay, this is the class which I want to access. Right. I have created the token handler. Now I need to attach this token handler to the connected app. So when I do an enable app, I can say search for the app. I've created a connected app here. I'm going to run it as an administrator. And that has been configured. That's all. Oh, yeah, there's one more thing which I usually forget. You should be adding the Okta URL to the remote site, or else you will get an error. So I'm going to say Okta URL, and I am going to add the Okta URL here. So that is registered. Okay, let's go to Postman now. And give a call to Salesforce to the token endpoint, right? So create a new HTTP request. This is going to be a post request to the Salesforce endpoint. Okay, the Salesforce token endpoint. The Salesforce token endpoint is okay. That's the token endpoint, but we need to put the domain name. So let's go to Salesforce and go to my domain. Copy the domain name. Has to be an HTTPS, right? Okay. Now to this token, it's a post request, so we need to populate the body, right? And it needs specific parameters. The first parameter would be the grant type. This is the URN for the grant type. Next one is the subject token type. The URN for the subject token type. The client ID. Remember, we copied the client ID and the client secret from Salesforce. This is, mind you, this is not Okta. This is the Salesforce client ID because you're going to hit the Salesforce connected app. And the last one is the subject token. This is the token which you have got from Okta, which you're going to replace it with a Salesforce token, right? So we had copied the Okta token also. That's all what needs to be done. And we can now go ahead and test it. Token handler is not found. Let's debug what is the issue. So in most cases, this error would come when the token handler is not configured right. So let's check. We have come to the token exchange handler config page. Go into the edit. Okay, we need to have at least one default handler, and we are saying this connected app is the default handler for this token flow. Let's go back and see if it is working now. No, we got a registration error. Let's debug this one. So when you get an error like a registration handler error, invalid handler, at least we know that the connected app is working as expected. When it is trying to compare the user information with the user information already there in Salesforce, that's where there is an error. So let's look into, luckily I did put some debug statements. It's gone through most of the case well. It is searching for a user by the name of tom.john.ef@gmail.com. That is the username which we had given in Okta. And I did make a, let's go and see what is the username I created in Salesforce. Oh, so the username I created in Salesforce is anand.narang.tef, which I should not, I should have tom.john.tef@gmail.com. Should go through. Okay, now let's try again, and we should be able to get the Salesforce Access token. There you go. That is the Salesforce Access token. I can use this Access token to get resources from Salesforce, hit any of the APIs in Salesforce, and so on. That's all for this particular session. Mail me, message me if or in the comments if you need any more details around it. I will try to put all the details with regards to links and the sample code in the description. Thanks.